Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Just to recap, first of all, the reason for this meeting. I know here in the town of Delaware we had a public hearing going over the new road preservation law. We call it the MMTF. There were a lot of questions asked at that meeting and we couldn't answer. So I spoke with Tom Bowes of the town of Callicoon, and he had a similar experience, and we decided this would be a great idea to get folks down from Delta Engineering to give a presentation and to answer what questions you have. So I'd like to introduce Chris Mabey from Delta Engineering and Steve Sampson. How did I do?
Pretty good.
Okay. So I'm going to turn the meeting over to them.
Thanks, Ed, and thanks, Tom. Thanks for to everybody for coming tonight. It's good to have this interaction and to see this kind of interest, in the program.
Sir, do you have a copy of the law that's being proposed that we could all pass around?
Do not have a copy of it.
I do. So, do you mind if I pass it around?
You have copies if you want?
Yeah, sure. Do you mind if I build a town later?
So I don't have enough for everybody, but maybe you can share, because it's really the law that matters, not the presentation. I'm sure that's great.
All right. Well, as we get into this, we're going to have about a 30 to maybe 35-minute presentation. We're going to go through a lot of the questions that have been asked, how we got to where we are with this program. Some of the questions that you may have are probably going to come up during the presentation. So all we'd ask is, let us get through the presentation. We're going to take about a 5-minute break after that, and we'll take questions for, a period of time. Ideally, we'll be wrapped up somewhere 8:30, 9 o'clock, but, we'll stay here as long as we need to.
So this is the law that's being proposed, as opposed to the presentation.
Can I ask a question to that? Because this is, the town of Delaware has a law. Different towns have their law. Are they all the same?
Yes.
They are exactly the same?
Well,
As proposed.
as
Okay.
proposed. They're not laws yet.
This would be a proposal.
It's a draft.
I think that's part of your presentation. They'll talk about the program, and then implementation is the law part that comes out.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. No problem. Briefly, some of the key players from Delta. Myself, I'm the program manager. Steve is our lead engineer for it. Many of you probably know Melanie, our program coordinator. Dave Kennicott is our group supervisor. Anthony, president of our company. Some of the features of the program, and again, some of this is going to be, for some of you, you've already seen it. Others in the group, it's going to be new to you. So bear with us. Let us just get through this, and we'll hit some questions that we don't address with this afterward. The approach of our program, it's not aimed at any industry or activity. Specifically, we don't look at a gas industry, a windmill industry. We're looking at a construction activity with a defined begin and end date. That's the only thing that this program looks at. And more specifically, we're looking at concentrated traffic with large spikes, something that you as a community wouldn't anticipate having on your roads as you're planning for these roads. One of the other keys, it doesn't regulate existing everyday traffic. That's something that's been there for years. We're not out to monitor that. That's something that's been planned for. There's no tie whatsoever to this from this program to the way your businesses are operated. There's no regulation of that whatsoever. And at the same time, please hold your questions until the end. Please hold your questions until we get through.
Construction
activity. Presentation.
And at the same time, while we're not regulating your existing everyday traffic, we at the same time can't hold a developer to be responsible for all the damage on the road, because there's traffic out there now that's using the roads. They are putting some damage on it. That's why you have a program within your highway department that every X number of years you're going to be do some sort of maintenance on it. So we have to consider that as we move forward. Once the proposed road protection law and accompanying road use agreement is adopted, developers are required to provide information to the town about their haul routes. That information is evaluated to determine if significant road impacts are likely. If the impacts, if the haul routes can handle that traffic, there's no regulation. End of the story, they go on, do their thing, and there's no more interaction. The flip to that, if there is the likely impact for damage, the developer is responsible, not the town. The developer is responsible to pay for the upgrades associated to cover the damage caused by their traffic. And when I say that, the cost, we're talking about the cost to upgrade the road, the fees to hire the engineer, and everything. There's not another increase or a cost that's going to be borne by the town at this point. Some of the advantages. Provides a uniform and relatively simple approach for securing information. We're going to get into a little bit more about the simplicity of it later in the program. Reduces some of the backlash because it doesn't target one industry versus another. All the developers, regardless of what they are held to the same standard in review. Again, and we're going to hit this a couple of times. We don't do anything with existing baseline traffic. It's out there. It's something that the towns are planning for and working with their various departments. And in the event that it does get taken to court, you've got something solid to start working from and defend how you're approaching all developer traffic. You're not saying this developer we're going to deal with one way, this developer we're going to deal with another way. It's the same approach regardless of who it is, where it is. So with that, I want to flip it over to Steve. He's going to go into a little more detail, then he's going to get tired of talking, and I'll jump back in.
All right, so this is going to be kind of the breakdown of the nuts and bolts, how this thing really works, okay? There's 3 phases as part of the program. Phase 1, we do our inventory, meaning we go out, we look at your roads, see how they're kept up, how they look, what state they're in, a snapshot that day when we're out there, okay? That gives us a good idea of how you guys operate, okay? Phase 2 is when you start looking at your law, the template law that you've been given as part of the package. Maybe you start making some changes, maybe you keep it the way it is, that's up to you, but you start looking at the law. Okay, that's phase 2. Phase 3 occurs when the development comes to town, whatever that may be, whether it be gas drilling, wind farm, etc. There's no partiality there, okay? All right, so getting a little deeper, phase 1. Like I said before, this is where we're assessing your roads, okay? We're going to go out and do a road inventory condition survey, which we've already done this for your towns, okay? But this is what we did. We talked to the town highway supervisor, we interviewed him, we found out what kind of construction and repair techniques you use on your roads, your costs for your labor, your equipment, and all your materials, general costs. And then we also went out and actually looked at 20 miles, a minimum of 20 miles in your town roads. Photo documented it, did visual surveys and rated them with a numerical system, 0 to 100% where their condition was at that point in time. And lastly, we went out and did traffic counts on 9 roads, okay, to give us an idea of what kind of volume you're seeing in your normal everyday baseline traffic. And this is where we get to setting what your normal traffic is, so we know what that is. We have something that now is is a mark that we can measure against down the road. So hopefully that'll start to make more sense as I continue on. And then we give you an engineer report that summarizes all that, okay? And you have all that documented going forward. So phase 2, 2 components here. We do our training, and we did training for many of you back in March already. This is just a refresher course because it has been a little while, and if you don't deal with it every day, it kind of gets a little fuzzy, some of the details. We provided it to anyone who wanted to come that's involved with the RPP program, and that's also where you got your program manuals and forms that you have on file. Okay. The template law, well, you're fairly familiar with that already. You've got them in your hands, or some form of it. Those have been developed by our legal partners, Whiteman, Osterman, and Hanna, and they've been used across New York State already from east to west, so they've been all over. And those, again, they're a template, they're a framework for you to work from, and you can either take them as they are, or you can make some changes to them if you deem that necessary. So there's that option there. Okay, so phase 3. Now, a lot of people ask, well, what's going to happen when this development traffic actually comes to town? What's the process here? So this is a brief look at how it works. You've got 3 players: the developer, you the town, and then us, okay? The first thing the developer's gonna do is he's going to fill out a haul route notification form that Chris mentioned earlier, okay? This is where we're gonna get some basic information from him, and we'll go in this a little more in depth, but this is where we're gonna start finding out where he's planning on taking his trucks, how many trucks he's taking there, and what the purpose of that is, okay? He's then gonna turn that over to you, okay? You have a one-page form that you fill out, okay? Basically, you take his truck traffic information.
Do you have that form?
It'll be coming up here in just a second on the slide, yeah? He'll be taking his truck information, transferring it on to another piece of paper, do a little bit of easy math to get a total number in easels, and we'll talk about what those are in a little bit, of traffic that are going to be traveling on your roads, okay? We're going to be comparing that number to an easel threshold. And if it hits that threshold, then it'll be regulated, meaning it'll be looked at further. And I'll explain more as I go. If it's under that, then it's done. We don't look at it anymore. Don't worry about it. We'll talk about those thresholds in depth here in just a minute. But if you do go through that process and it looks like, oh, they've tripped the threshold, there's likely going to be some, truck traffic, possible damage here, then you would turn that over to us. We're going to double check the math, make sure everything looks good. Start taking a closer look at what roads they're planning on using, okay? Then we can start looking at what impacts we might be seeing. Are they traveling on unimproved earth roads? Are they traveling on asphalt roads, chip seal roads? Because all those different roads are going to be able to handle different kinds of loading. So we can start identifying some of the spots where, there might be more impact as opposed to others. Okay, so I mentioned the haul route notification form. This is a 3-page form that the developer fills out, okay? And I've summarized here basically the pieces of information we get from him. Contact information, a brief summary of the nature of the project, what kind of activities he's planning on doing here, all right? The project begin and end date, again, that's the important thing here. There's a begin and an end date. That helps define it as a project that could be regulated. What truck traffic we expect to see there. Are we talking 50 trucks? Are we talking 200 trucks? What class? What size? That information's all on there. Where are these trucks going? What roads does he want to use to conduct his activity? Okay? So then let's talk about this threshold a little bit. We've been talking about threshold. What is it? Kind of a global way of thinking about this is think of it as an insurance policy. Okay? How much insurance do you want to have? Okay? You want a $100,000 life policy? You want a $50,000 life policy? Same thing with your roads. You can set this easel threshold that triggers regulation wherever you see fit. Okay? And we'll have some suggestions coming up here as to where that level may be. But if you think of it in terms of insurance, depending where you set that threshold is going to depend how much traffic is going to be regulated or not regulated. Okay? Okay, so this is the form that you, the municipality, would fill out. 1 page, okay? The purpose of this form is to compare that truck traffic that you now have that information from the developer. You're going to be comparing that truck traffic to that predetermined threshold that you have set for your town, okay, whatever it may be. And this threshold is based on the need to have a reasonable, fair, consistent basis for regulation. Okay? You pick a threshold, and that's the one you stick with. Okay, we don't pick one for this guy, one for this guy, and one for that guy. There's one threshold that you use across the board for all development activity. Okay? This threshold is also partially based on public perspective. In other words, there's a point when a road in its lifetime, it gets to a point where the public starts looking at it as undrivable. Okay? There's a certain percentage of loss of that road's life for it to get to that point. And we're not going to get too technical, talk about too many numbers here, but just as the basic idea, okay, you're going to lose, a certain amount of road use to get to this point. Well, we've come up with some numbers on our end of what that is, and we've said, okay, maybe the road could take, say, 20% loss until it gets to that point. But we're not going to allow each developer to have 20% of that road's life. We've narrowed it down to a smaller band, closer to 2% in most cases. Okay, so that's kind of where that threshold comes into play here and how it's set. Okay, so one thing that you'll see on that form that you'll be filling out is this term easels, and we'll get into this just a little bit. Basically, think of it. What easel stands for is an equivalent single axle load. Okay, a certain amount of force on a set of axles the load that it distributes on the road. That is an easel. Okay? For the purposes of this discussion, what we're talking about tonight, just think of it as a common unit of measurement for traffic. Okay, we can take passenger cars, we can take pickup trucks, we can take dump trucks, concrete trucks, and figure out how much impact they're going to have on the road collectively in one number as an easel. Okay? A lot of the municipalities that we've worked with thus far have been setting an easel threshold of about 50. Okay? And we'll get into some equivalents later so you can see how many of certain kinds of trucks you would need to hit a 50 easel threshold. That's coming up here in a few slides. Okay? We found that it's been appropriate for most local road types. Of course, you know, road types vary a little bit. Like I say, you have unimproved earth roads and you have asphalt roads. So you have to find something that kind of balances those out. And it seems to be able to handle seasonal variations in temperature very well. You know, in the winter, obviously, your roads are a lot, you know, firm because they're frozen, hopefully, unless it was last week and then maybe they weren't. But if you set that threshold around here, it seems to be good to handle that freeze-thaw situation. Now, keep in mind here, we're talking about this threshold, okay? What it is doing is it's providing a trigger point for regulation, meaning we're going to watch that, okay, or you're going to watch that and see what's going on with your roads. That doesn't mean that just because somebody hits a threshold, they're going to have to start doling out money and making repairs and doing all this stuff right away. It just simply means that you've hit an amount that may be causing some damage on the roads, and we're going to continue to monitor it and look at it further. Okay. Now, like I said, each municipality can pick their own threshold. Okay, we found that 50 is a generally good number, but if you wanted to go with something else, that's fine. We just ask, you know, you discuss it with us, and maybe we can figure out, you know, maybe a number is a little bit better for your area. Maybe your roads are a little different; they can handle more traffic or less traffic. Okay, so there is a little bit of flexibility there. And I just wanted to make this one last point here. I've mentioned unimproved earth roads a few times, and that is defined by having an earth road that has less than 4 inches of gravel on it. Okay, that's what we define as an unimproved earth road. And if one of those falls into that threshold, above that threshold, then it's automatically going to be regulated, because those are the ones that are most susceptible to, you know, the freeze-thaw cycle and possible damage. Okay. Now again, that means it's going to be regulated. Doesn't mean that suddenly we're just going to be asking for money to do repairs.
On that threshold though, that does change by the season though. We have a variable from 50 to 200 basically when it comes to winter time, right? 50 wasn't just the only threshold, that was spring threshold, right?
You want to answer it?
Go ahead.
The recommended, what we recommend, and we talked about this in the training pushing a year ago, is that if you use 50 across the board, you're always going to be covered in terms of your seasonal fluctuations. Let's take 2 weeks ago and right now as an example. 2 weeks ago, it was 50 degrees outside. A good winter threshold in the ideal winter conditions is about 400 easels, if you wanted to look at it in that type of scenario. 2 weeks ago and 50 degrees, 400, you're in big trouble. Right now, it's 10 degrees out, roads are hard as a rock, they're going to obviously take a lot more traffic. If you move forward with using 400 for a winter type season and you get that unseasonal temperature flux, you've just bought all that damage. You can't pass that on to the developer because you're holding him to a 400 easel threshold. He's below that, so he's okay, he's good to go. But the road, realistically, when it hits 50 degrees in the middle of winter, is going to melt on the top. It's going to get buckled. It's going to, depending on the type of road, it's going to have some damage caused to it that it wouldn't have if it weren't that cold. And that can't be passed on to the developer. Now, if you're in a position where you know the guy's going to start here and end here, it's a relatively short period of time, and you've got a lot of confidence in your weatherman, who's the only person I know that can be wrong half the time and still keep his job. If you've got confidence that you know the weather's not going to change, then you could do something, work with that. But what we recommend is if you hold everybody to a threshold that's going to work for your worst condition. You've covered yourself, it doesn't matter what point of the year you're working in, or your worst condition. So that you're not going to absorb anything additional beyond what you typically would see on your road for your regular traffic for damage for any type of, or any season that you've got. And Steve's a couple of slides away from talking a little bit more about the number of trucks that are associated with this. I think that once you see those numbers, it'll put it into a little bit different perspective that this number sounds low, but in reality, it's not. It's a significant number of trucks. Does that answer your question?
Well, I just know there was a picture before that showed multiple thresholds for the different seasons.
Correct.
Yeah.
But
those are all regulated.
go back on
That one there.
Right, but next to that, we're saying we recommend to you using a number. And at the end of the day, our recommendation is to use 50. You can, you as a community, your board can say, we believe that number should be higher because our roads are in better shape. We don't have anything that's likely to have a lot of damage caused to it, so we can bump that number up. Conversely, you could have some roads that you know are not good. You may want to lower that number.
Okay.
All right, so moving forward, this is the slide that Chris was talking about. So let's say 50 easels is your threshold, for example, okay? These numbers here, these are different classes of trucks as designated by the FHWA, okay? That's a national standard, okay? We're not going to get too in depth with the specifics there, but we'll take a class 6 truck, for example. That's your concrete trucks, your dual axle dump trucks, okay? The ones that you commonly see from someone's building a home. You might have some concrete delivered, some gravel delivered, okay? With a 50 easel threshold, to even trip regulation, which means just looking at it, you'd have to have almost 120 of those between your begin and end date, traveling on the same route back and forth. So a lot of the people that are concerned about, oh, I'm putting up a house, am I going to be regulated? Are you really going to have 120 concrete trucks to build one house? I guess it's probably not. So
How much does a lumber truck weigh? How much does a logging truck weigh? What class are they?
I think they're going to be up. What's going on?
How much is a triaxle, single axle? I mean, where do they fit into this? 119 is actually low.
That's not pounds. That's number of
I
trucks.
get it. 3
Okay.
houses, 4 houses. Everyone say it won't affect 5 houses. It definitely will.
Well, we'll get into that some more as we go here. So this just gives you an idea of what quantity of trucks we're talking about.
That's not
for
per day,
50
it's per project.
threshold. Yes,
Not per day,
project.
per project.
Per project, yes. Okay. All right. Turn back over to Chris.
All right. Unfortunately, the pretty colors that we have in the screen are not projecting well at all. What we want to talk about just briefly here is the colors on the map. Hey, here we are down here in your neck of the woods. That what looks like bright green on here looks more like moss green. The green color on the screen here, Otsego County, some in Broome, Tompkins, almost all of Schuyler, about half of Steuben. Those are municipalities we have under contract right now within this program. So this is not just something that this area is looking at. The whole upstate portion of New York is looking at it and is working, you know, some of them are working with us. Blue are areas that we are in the process of working through developing a contract with. We expect them to be under contract soon. And in addition to that, we're in the preliminary stages of a couple more have reached out to us in advance of some upcoming governmental decisions that they think are coming. By the end of in the next few months, right now we're 47 municipalities strong in the program. We think that we're potentially doubling that in the next few months. So the program's got a lot of merit. I'm not here to sell to you by any stretch. Just wanted to give you an idea of we're looking at something that's not just in this area. This is an approach that's being used across all of upstate New York.
I have a question. My township is Fremont, which is not a part of this
Okay.
okay, and I see it's a different color green. What does that mean? Have they approached you?
If
Fremont
it's
is the upper left of Sullivan.
this one here, that means that's somebody that we've gone out and visited with. This map is actually an internal tracking
Right, and then
mechanism
they
for
went
us.
through.
Orange, and on our screen here it's orange. That's just That color are ones that we've gone out and visited with. They've either asked us to come out or we've made some arrangements with the Highway Supers Association to go out and
They went through phase one.
do a present, correct.
So if this town wanted to rejoin or hire you again, since they already did make us a little bit of a down payment, what would it take, since they're not part of this group?
We'd have to actually sit individually, speak with the town, and you know, if it was to enter as part of the group, work through whatever processes there were to form the group.
Is it too late? It's not too late?
It's never too late.
Thank you.
From our perspective, it's never too late. We can't speak for, you know, the coalition, and there's a number of coalitions. Well, I'll push the right buttons here. Sullivan County is one. Otsego County is a coalition. They did a little bit different approach, but at the end of the day, they're the same as your MMTF. The same type of approach. There's a group of municipalities that banded together and work. Chemung County is coming on board as one entire entity. The county is going to administer the program for all of the municipalities within it. This one up here is looking at it as a smaller group of coalition. And then all the rest of them that you see in that, what is a nasty looking green there, those are just towns that happen to butt up against one another, but are not, they're independent of each other. There's no tie. What I want to go through now, and we're actually going a little longer than I thought, but that's good because we've got some good interaction going here. We want to go through the questions that we hear repeatedly. These are questions from day one to some conversations we had with Ed and Tom and Ethan in preparation for this meeting. They've come from all across the state, have been asked numerous times. We call them frequently asked questions. When we started, when Steve and I started with this a year and a half ago, it was about 1.5 pages, our fact sheet, which you guys have picked up a copy of now. It's about 6. And it's probably going to continue to grow. Not sure that frequently asked questions, as much as just ask questions, may be more appropriate, but these are the ones we think are key for this conversation. And one we always hear is, tell us what a developer is. You know, is that I want to go build something and I'm going to charge somebody for it? In theory, yes. The developer, as it pertains to this program, is the entity responsible for and paying for the development. That's the one guy up on top, the one person that's writing the check to take care of everybody else.
Is one route, is it to and from, or just, is that 2 trips or 1 trip? To a site and from a site? Is that 2 trips? It's 1 trip. So one trip.
We're identifying a truck.
What's that?
We're identifying a truck.
That's traveling to the project and traveling back for the project. That's 1 trip.
Correct.
Even though he's traveling on the road twice.
Correct. 1 truck. Does the road protection program address traffic originating and traveling to other towns that pass through your town? In other words, the development's here, your town is here, their supplier is over here, he's coming through your town. Are they regulated? They are potentially regulated if they're traveling on your roads. They're going to fill out the same form, do the same process as if the development were occurring in your road. It's still damage occurring to your road that you didn't plan for by a large activity. Why is existing traffic or the traffic associated with the development after it is open not regulated? This program focuses only on that traffic, that construction traffic defined by where it starts, where the construction activity starts, and where it ends, and whatever that development is, opens. Beyond that, it's not construction activity anymore. That's something that typically your planning boards, your zoning boards, things like that are going to have worked through to address. That's new baseline traffic for you, because you've got, you know, everybody kind of focuses on the gas industry. Well, a Walmart could come in, for example. It's going to take a lot of stuff to build that thing. It's probably a regulated or something that's going to be reviewed for regulation. This program would look at the activity to get that thing up and running. Once it opens and you've got X thousand more cars coming through there, that's not anything, this program doesn't have anything to do with that. That's an issue that your planning group is going to work with.
question about that specific point. If the development happens, and let's say we are talking about gas drilling, so if we clear the pad, we do the job, there's a, they do the frack job, and then they leave the development. Now they're gonna come back and refrack that, I don't know how many times, but it's possible to refrack it or to, re-drill, in a different lateral. What's the trigger that's going?
That would be another activity, same site, but it's another activity some period of time later with a defined begin and end. That traffic again is going to be subject to regulation. So you've got your traffic to, that's regardless of whatever it is. Walmart comes in, builds a store that doesn't have the supermarket attached to it. Wow, this is doing great, it's doing much better than we thought, but the construction activity to build that thing is done. Okay, we've taken care of that, we've addressed it. Walmart comes back and says, this is great, we're gonna make more money here, we're gonna double the size of the store. We've got a new construction activity. That is looked at again as regulation, is potential regulation. So it's going to go through that same process.
Right, I understand what you're saying, except for that if you're refracking a well, it's not new construction activity. You're not clearing.
Subject to permit.
I think it gets another permit.
Subject
You go back.
to permit.
So that, like a building permit for the Walmart, and then they need 2 years later another building permit for the grocery store, for the supermarket. The DEC would grant separate permits for each of those phases.
So the DEC
projects.
permit would be the trigger?
It can be, yes.
No,
Because
no, it not can be. Will it be the trigger?
that is completely up to how you define your local law. That's something that we don't have the final say in. And that's the key with this whole thing, and we're going to hit it about 10 times between now and when I'm done. And we've hit it a lot now. Is we're going to, between the lawyers and our presentation and what the program actually does, we give you a bunch of suggested guidelines to follow. If you take them and run with them the way that they are exactly, that's great. At the same time, your town may have something specific in it that they want to address, that they want to look at a little bit differently. The town has the ultimate authority in the final decision in everything that's done with this program.
It's similar to that question. My first question was, what is it that prompts a developer to come and contact the town in the first place, and it keeps them from just
again, no, and I think that some of these questions we're going to hit a little bit. So,
thank you.
So we've talked about, does the DRPP or the Road Protection Program affect existing community businesses or local heavy traffic, which we all know is the buses, the delivery vehicles, farm traffic, etc. No. I mean, we've said it once, we'll say it again, we'll say it until tomorrow morning when the sun comes up. There is no regulation of an existing business in your community. We're only looking at traffic within.
Can't go any lower.
You're in a firehouse, no one can.
They offered to turn it off, but they said it wasn't going to go off that much unless there was something bad happening. And then I think that would get louder, so. I'll wait. Well, something bad is happening. Again, our program focuses solely on impacts to your roadways during and related to construction activity in opening or improving something. What happens after they're done, that's a planning, typically a planning zoning type thing. Can the minimum threshold triggering further review be changed? Steve has touched on this. Yes, we give you a recommendation. At the end of the day, if you believe that that number is not applicable, it should be massaged a little bit. Can it go up? Absolutely. Can it go down? It really depends on what your town wants to look at as far as how much traffic do you want to potentially regulate. The higher the number, the less you're going to regulate, the more potential damage your town is going to absorb and be responsible for maintaining and improving, maintaining the roads or improving them if they start to fail. The flip to that is you lower the number, you start capturing more, requiring more regulation. That's going to be passed on to likely more developers. And smaller numbers, of the lower the threshold, the smaller size developer you're going to be capturing and doing that. And that's where you might get into some of your like your residential builders, for example, that, you know, are typically not going to be caught by this. You lower that ESL number down, you could potentially be capturing them. Not saying it's good, bad, or otherwise, but that's something that you'd look at if you're going to alter that.
I did notice though that you had a place where the town board can grant exceptions in the law.
Town
To
board
applicants.
can-
What we provide is a template law that the towns can do what they want. We don't say it has to be this way. We've got a town, and I can't tell you which one because I don't remember, that wanted to specifically address commercial manure hauling. Something new to me. Evidently, it's got a lot of wheels in parts of upstate New York where it's not, in their eyes, considered an agricultural activity because somebody's being paid to move this manure around. That particular entity wanted to exempt or actually pull that in rather than leave it as an agricultural activity. They wanted to pull it in because they felt that that was causing damage to their roads that they really shouldn't be dealing with. Does exceeding the minimum threshold mean development is regulated? No. And Steve, you know, kind of explained this. We'll touch on it again. That threshold, that minimum threshold, means okay, this thing has got such size that we need to look at in more detail the roads that they're hauling. And now it could be that road or roads is capable of holding it, but we need to do some investigations before we know that. How much investigation do we do? Well, we'll touch on that in a second. If the road is capable of carrying that additional traffic, no, it's not going to be regulated. But if that road is not capable of carrying that additional traffic, we've exceeded the threshold, they will be regulated and they'll be responsible, the developer will be responsible, to make the improvements to the road to maintain the shape that it's in now. And that's one thing, it's not in the fact, and I don't know that we touched on it. When we talk about upgrades in improvements to the road, the upgrades that the developer is responsible for are to, when he starts on day one, whatever shape that road is in, when he's done on day 50 or whatever the end of his term is, what it looks like here needs to be what it looks like here. Now, it's possible that he's using a road that needs to have more done to it to sustain the type of traffic that he's putting on it, which means that road could be improved beyond what you've got now. But the only way in our program that can occur is because the traffic that he's putting on it is going to cause damage such that the road has to be improved beyond what it would be if he weren't there. Will all concentrated traffic, large or small, be subject to the same expenses for protecting or repairing roads? No, certainly not. If you've got a developer, let's say that has 1,000 trucks associated with it, and you've got another developer with 200 trucks associated with it, and they're the same type of truck, who's going to do more damage? The 1,000 truck guy is going to be responsible for paying appropriately, you know, what his damage is. The 200 truck guy is going to be you know, likely causing less damage. They're not going to have as much responsibility. Who's responsible for the upgrades and costs associated with them? Again, end of the day, the town has the ultimate authority, the final decision and everything. The town is going to have their engineer come up with, here's what we need to keep this road in the shape it's in, or to make it so the road is capable of carrying the trucks. The town then decides, do they want to make the repairs themselves? Do they want to let the developer do it if they're comfortable that the developer's got the capability to do it? Or do you want to put it out to competitive bid? Whichever one it is, you choose it, but the developer is responsible for the cost. It's not a cost to the town. Even if your guys are doing it, the developer is going to have to reimburse the town for those costs. Those costs are based on what we've touched on in coming up with the engineer's report. We've identified how you reconstruct your roads, what the costs are, what the materials are, so that you know going in, contractor knows what's going in. They're not something that we're pulling from Rochester or New York City or any place. How much time needs to be invested by the developer and municipality? Developer's got a 3-page form he needs to fill out. Most of the information is something he already has on hand. He knows where his trucks are coming from. He might not know how many there are, so he or she's got to do a little digging to call the suppliers and say, hey, how many trucks are you going to be sending? And they've got to fill out a map. That then comes to the town. The town looks at it and summarizes it on a one-page form. What we found in conversations with others and in the training that we've done, where we've sat down with people such as yourself that have not seen these forms at all before, that we can sit down with you from scratch and get you trained to get these things figured out in about an hour. So realistically, you're going to get through a few of these and you're going to be able to probably bang them out in 15, 20 minutes, a half an hour. Conservatively, we'll use the hour that it took us to train. So the developer's got probably an hour, the municipality's got about an hour. And this is this one here. Will every developer be forced to fill out the forms? This is a local decision. We can't tell you who to fill out and who not to fill out.
Excuse me, 1 second. This has to be clarified because it's such a pivotal point of your presentation. What are you just saying as a developer? Because on page 2 it says construction activity. Means any activity occurring or to incur in or outside of the town that results in land disturbance or improvement of a parcel. That's what it says in your template law. So is that a developer?
The developer is the person associated with that activity.
Of putting in a swimming pool?
If he is funding that activity, he is the
Building
developer.
a shed?
He is the developer.
So if someone building a shed is a developer.
He is that person.
Someone building a stone wall, doing construction activity, improving their parcel is a developer.
I'm not sure that I can say it any clearer, and I apologize for that. The developer is the person that is ultimately paying for it, whoever it is. It's like the equivalent of a general contractor on a job. The general contractor's got a heating person, a concrete person, a sheetrock person. That general contractor is the person that's paying the bills. That person is the developer.
Sure. The reason why we're here tonight is because people are wondering what developer meant.
We're here tonight to answer a series of questions and interact. We want to answer as many questions as we can. What we're trying to do is go through the questions that we've been hit with a lot and then come back to those like yours.
But construction activity, is that if I go to put a swimming pool in my house, are you defining me as a developer?
Says right there, the town has the final say.
The town has the final say when they adopt this. This is just a draft. Every town has to adopt.
No, but this is the town. This is the one that Gary passed.
Yep.
This is the one that Town Tustin passed. This is the one that Ed voted on or had a public hearing on. It's the one that Tom almost came to vote on.
But your question is going to have to be answered whatever town you're in, because the towns are going to adjust them to their own thing.
I
So
think
what
Delta
Gary
can
passed,
agree
we
that
might not.
if everyone's not doing the same thing, it's at odds of what they attempted to do. And it makes it very hard on the developer who turns out to be a homeowner doing some improvement to their land.
Hey, I guess to answer this question.
What triggers it? What triggers filling out that form?
Can I answer, please? Thank you. Is every developer forced to fill out the form? You need to look at this two ways. How much do you want to, as a town, look at paperwork? That's going to depend on, really, do you want to look at, if somebody comes in for a building permit, every single building permit comes in, can you say, I want you to fill out a form? Certainly. We have a municipality in the program that wants to do that. Now, there's some huge dissension between those within that community that want to do that, and this is within their local board, that want to do that, and those that think, based on the thresholds we're talking about and the trucks, that seems like overkill. If you know that your class 6 trucks are 120 and you're building a shed, or a pool in your example, if you're building a pool that takes 120 trucks, I want to come swim at your house.
Yeah, small things is not going to.
But you still have to fill out the form. You still have to understand where your trucks
No,
are coming from.
no,
Yes.
no,
you don't.
no.
You are
It
not.
depends on how many vehicles are going to go to that
Not
site.
true. Well, how can you do it without filling out the form?
Can I just speak 1 minute, Chris?
Please.
Okay.
Planning board.
Yeah.
So
The
now you have to
developer-
go to the planning board?
If you're gonna be, no, okay. All right.
I mean, that's why we're here to have this conversation, not to like learn about Delta
One thing is,
specific.
developer's not in the law.
Well, that's what you want, but other people.
Developer is
want
a
to hear
generic
the
term
whole
you're
thing.
using, it's not in the law. So,
Right.
developer, I mean, it's not a major point, but developer is a term they're using as person responsible. It's not actually in the law.
It's misleading.
No,
that's not
Developer
really
has a
relevant.
connotation to it of someone developing multiple homes, multiple
Right.
projects.
They're just saying developer as sponsor, but they're saying, they're using, I believe they're using that generically in the presentation, because in the law, there's no definition of developer. All it says is applicability. It's a person, you know, this law applies to any person engaged in construction activity.
Improving a parcel.
Exactly.
Disturbing
But it's
land.
not saying that everyone is responsible for filling out the form. I believe it allows the town the discretion to say, and they have a list of possible permits and triggers in the program manual, that then they can say, well, you've applied for this permit, of which a building permit is not one of the typical permits. They say, therefore, here's the application for your haul route permit, your haul route determination. So
The
it's
idea
not
is that everybody
required, it's not
passes the
incumbent on
same one.
anyone in the town to, it's not necessarily, it's gonna depend on the town, incumbent on everyone in the town to fill out the form. It would be more for the town, after you've applied for your stormwater permit or applied for your mining permit, then the town would call you up and say, oh, we've got your mining permit, your gravel mining permit, we need to know your haul route.
Not what the law says.
So I have a question. Why is there no definition of developer in the actual law? And maybe this isn't a question for Delta, but, you know.
It was
maybe-
a legal determination.
I think we're trying to look at developer and put it to a law. What we're talking about in terms of a developer, or the word we're using, and you can call it anything. We're talking about who is the town going to be interacting with while this is occurring? Who's going to be funding the repair to the road?
Right, and I understand.
If you want to say contractor, it's
Homeowner?
No, but I understand what you're saying, but my concern is, and it's really probably the opposite of what Charles's concern is, because he's probably concerned that the trigger is going to be too low, and I'm not really concerned about that. I mean, or that the trigger will, whatever, we're on opposite sides of where the trigger is gonna be here. If developer is not defined in the law, then isn't the law, isn't there gonna be like an opportunity for segmentation? So that instead of, whoever the person is or the company is who's going to come in and say, well, we're doing this project, then
Who's
couldn't it
doing
be?
the project?
Well, I don't
At
know.
the end of the day,
Let's
who's
say
doing
it's
the project?
Let's say
I
it's
mean, that-
AAA Orchard that's doing the project. So the AAA Orchard is doing the big
Okay,
project.
okay.
So couldn't it, if the law doesn't have a definition of developer, and I don't understand this 100%, so that's why I'm asking the question, couldn't other people who are working on this same project come in and say, well, I'm doing this part of the project, and
No, it
if,
regulates traffic associated with a construction activity. It can't go pick on, I don't know who this guy is. This guy's got a trucking company, Ethan's got a concrete company, and this lady over here has something else. They're all working on the same one. This program cannot go after these guys individually.
Right.
They have to go, it goes after.
Whoever we're working for.
Correct, the overall entity.
Right.
so sponsors defined in the law then.
Well, town, see the word town, that's not defined either. The is not
Right.
defined.
It
I
doesn't-
mean, it's, you know, it's such a, develop is a term that they're using to try to put a handle on it. That's all it is.
Developer
Whoever's
The
responsible.
law, I think it should have a definition in it of what we're talking about.
Well, I think
there's
to
gonna
make
be
it
one
easy is
person
no matter
apply for
what
a
you wanna do with your
spot,
property,
right?
you have to go, you have to go and get a building permit, or you have to find out if you need a permit. So you go to your local municipality, whatever it happens to be, you file for a permit. When you file for a permit, it may be, okay, I wanna put a swimming pool in. You say you might wanna put a swimming pool in. Your town may have a thing about a pool, whatever it is, the code enforcement officer will tell you what it is. It probably will not fall under the threshold of how many trucks you're gonna have, so you probably won't have to haul it. You won't have to have a haul route, unless it's gonna be, 10 miles wide or something. Now, if the same person or another person goes in and asks for a building permit, and he's got like 40 acres, and he wants to put a subdivision in, well, right away, he's not gonna get a building permit for a subdivision. It's gotta go to the planning board, it's gotta go to the zoning board, it's gotta all be worked through there. Then by the time it gets to that point, then they'll probably have to figure out a haul road. So it's gotta go through so many steps. And every town is not gonna have the same haul route thing. They're not going to. They're gonna specify it for their areas. and then they really don't have to have the same.
So
Why would they
then
all have to be the same? You still have to file for permit in whatever town, and that activates the whole situation, is by filing out a permit.
That's not true.
It is true.
Sure it is.
No,
It is true.
That would be great if it said. If
It
you-
is true, it's true. This is
You
just,
can't-
you can't,
you
you're
can't do
looking
it
at,
without a permit.
you're looking at something.
That Gary passed.
Okay, but
Okay.
Gary, don't you have to go file a permit? Yep, they have to go file
First
for a
person you're
permit.
probably gonna see is my building inspector. right?
That's it, there you go.
And
You're
then
gonna,
he
you're gonna
may
wanna
make a
put that
suggestion
pool
at
in.
that point. Correct.
That's how it works.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
Does it
That's how
really,
it
you have to
works.
apply for a building permit in your town?
Everybody, whenever you do anything in the town, you have to see the building inspector.
They got a stage
drilling
permit. Absolutely.
Slightly different in every town.
It's slightly
Unless,
different
unless
every
you're trying to
town,
get away with something.
but that is the rule.
And then he
That
catches
is the rule. That's the general rule. The general rule is you file for a permit. You go in and say, can I build this? Can I build a fence? Can I build a partition fence between me and my neighbor? Before you start putting up, you better go see if you need a permit. Because if you proceed to do that without a permit, you might have to tear it down. So the whole thing is started by filing for a permit. Then it goes,
It's not true.
yes, it is true. Yes, it is true.
We've got just a few more slides to get through. Let's get through these. And then let's just take a quick break. I think there's a couple of smaller groups we may want to have a discussion. I'm not sure if everybody wants to stick around or not. I'm not suggesting that anybody leave, but just if we get through this so that you can get out if this is what you came to see. Does the program account for multiple developers? If the developers are on the road at the same time, absolutely. And we look at this in the context of proportionalizing how many trucks are on the road from each developer. If it's one developer or two developers, or if it's 5 developers, the damage assessment is specific to the type of truck, how many of them. So if you've got both guys have got the same type of truck, we'll keep it simple. Both guys have got the same type of truck, or I apologize for using guys. Both companies.
Both ladies.
Now, when I did my dry run today, I got my hand slapped pretty good about that. So, 60%. Let's say this entity has 60 trucks. This one's got 40 trucks using the road. The damage is going to be assessed right in that ratio: 60%, 40%. But another point to mention here is that if we've got developer A, developer B, if they are individually not regulated, if this guy by himself, this person by himself is not regulated, this person by himself is not regulated, you cannot combine that to make a regulated activity. If they're not regulated by themselves, they're not regulated, period. It doesn't matter how many of them are on there. That person is not regulated. And another question, and this is quite a common one, what happens if the data provided by the developer is perceived to be inaccurate? Excellent question. The only way to know for sure that the trucks that are in question are associated with that development is to stand right in front of the entrance and count them as they're coming in and leaving. Typically though, everybody saw the number of the trucks we're talking about based on a 50 ESL threshold. Somebody that's coming in with that type of development is not going to be wanting to deal with coming up with a number that has 20 fewer trucks to escape the initial threshold regulation.
How many trucks does it take to build a house?
It depends on your contract. Please let me finish.
But just simple.
Please let me
How many trucks does
finish.
it take to build a house?
How many square foot?
2,000 square feet.
But Charles, don't you know the answer to that?
I do actually.
do.
That's what's the problem. That's actually the concern, is that the threshold's too
And if you're
low.
gonna build it with pickup trucks or Class 8 trucks.
problem I have
So
is
that's why this program is in place.
With the truck traffic, whatever this developer is doing, who's gonna monitor it? A lot of it puts it on the highway superintendent. That's a lot of responsibility to monitor something like that. Whatever it is, whether it's fracking, whether it's building a house, whatever it is. You know, that's the only thing
No, and that's a very good point.
police it.
We had a project in the town of, and I'm going to get them backwards, either Caton or Corning. A person that was on one of the roads that was being used said, there's too many trucks here. Whatever number it is that they gave, not knowing what the number was, it's wrong. It's too low. And they sat out at the end of their driveway. They were at a nice T intersection. They counted the trucks themselves. Whoever the property owner was, went to the town and said, oh, okay, well, you know what, these numbers are closer to being, they're accurate. When the developer fills out that haul route form, they're signing their name to it, stating, this is an accurate representation of what I'm going to have for trucks. If that number's wrong, your highway super is likely to have some sense of, just by his daily travels, there's more trucks going out that road than what he was talking about, and he's going to start watching it. The town's got the ability to do a stop work order until this situation is resolved. They've certified their numbers as accurate. If they're not, they're responsible by the law to provide you updated numbers. It doesn't make sense for a developer to try to cheat the system. Now, is every developer honest? No, of course not.
You also have somebody
trail
that
came
might
up on
wanna,
a pole. I mean, people have them for hunting. Put a trail came up and watch trucks go by. You can record them.
But you
I
also
think my
if it comes down to
issue
that.
is that if you have
Right?
somebody that's against whatever this traffic is,
Put a trail came up.
it could become a witch hunt that's gonna put a lot of time on your highway superintendents or whoever's gonna do the monitoring.
But don't we have the ability, once we know a project's coming in, before they use the haul routes, we can assess the condition of the road and also assess it afterwards, and they're still responsible for whatever it is to put it back to the way it was required.
And
So your count can be inaccurate and still come to the same term at the end, right?
once we get to the point of, and we're getting into a little bit deeper, which is good, we get to the point where we expect damage to occur on a road. It's looked at two ways. Is this damage going to be such that the road's going to fail during use? That it's going to have to be shut down, reconstructed? That's going to aggravate the developer, and it's going to aggravate your constituents even more. Your phone will not stop ringing. If that's the type of damage that's going to occur, we're going to recommend to you that the repairs be made ahead of time. Before the trucks even hit the road, upgrade the road so that you don't have the damage. Everybody goes on their merry way. That's the end of it. The other one is there may be some damage that will occur, or it's just a matter of you've got a road. Let's say you put a chip seal down, and you've got a 10-year life on your chip seal, and you're going to run all these additional trucks across it. You monitor it during use to see how much damage is occurring, to establish where you're at, how much you're losing. Not necessarily in the road is damaged, it has to be rebuilt. How much are you losing at the back end of the road life? You put it down last year, you think it's going to last 10 years. The end of the project, now we've only got 8 years out of this. That developer is going to be responsible to put 2 years of life back into it. And I guess the closing thought, and we're going to take a quick break, and we'll come back. We're very specific in what we look at. It's a construction activity with a defined begin and end date. To go to the question that was earlier, if it's a revisit to that same site, it's another construction activity at a later date because we started here, we ended here, something happened. That site opened, whatever it happened to be. Somebody comes back afterward and makes another improvement to that site. It's another construction activity. That's looked at a second time, a third time, a fifth time, however many times that occurs. It's not targeting any development type or industry, just that traffic. And I hate to keep beating on this, but it's really the key. And the other thing with this, and we've got some good going back and forth with this, the town at the end of the day is the one that's going to make the decision on what exactly is in the law or not in the law. What the thresholds are, and who's going to be filling out the forms or not filling out the forms.
Could you back up just one slide? There was another question? Go ahead.
One of my thoughts was the fixing of the roads are going to be assessed through this process to the, we don't know what a developer is, but whoever's doing it, right? Does that also include the cost of your engineering firm to get there? Or is the town responsible for your costs?
All the costs,
all part
once
okay.
that threshold is exceeded, and we've now hit what we call phase 3.
Yeah.
We're going to have a regulated activity. From that point moving forward, all the costs associated with that particular activity are the responsibility of the developer, not the town. Now, will the town have some money? The town's going to have some money in terms of time invested of, they're going to have to review the plans. You know, we're gonna come up with some plans. They're gonna have to sit down and review them. There's gonna be some coordination effort. But in terms of money changing hands, that is not the case. All the costs are associated with the responsibility of the developer.
Thank
Is there
But
any
what-
escrow involved with this? If the developer screws up, who goes after them?
Okay, we'll get you, then Ethan, then you. To answer your question, once we get to a phase 3 project where we anticipate regulation, the road use implementation kicks in, where an escrow account is set up that's established as part of the law. Typically, it's funded with $5,000. Developer money, and we recommend maintaining a minimum balance of $2,500. That way, as the plans are being developed for the improvement, the evaluations are going on, if your contractor decides he doesn't want to do anything and moves on, the town is not stuck with any additional costs for something that they didn't have any plans to do with in the beginning. They've got that escrow fund to pull from to pay for those costs.
I meant for the road repair.
The road repair would have to be, yes, that's all taken care of in advance as well.
What do you mean in advance? I don't understand.
What?
I mean, is it in an escrow account? $5,000?
That's for the initial part of it, where we're looking at and doing the evaluations.
That's pocket money, but for a major project.
Yes, then once you get into, okay, here's the type of improvement we need to make, that amount, the escrow amount, is going to increase accordingly. That money is always going to be upfronted by the developer. It will not be the responsibility of the town to pay something and then go for reimbursement after the fact. That money is always going to come from the developer.
The template says that the money goes into a non-interest bearing account that the supervisor then pays the stuff from. Why is it a non-interest bearing account?
You can't make, I'm not a lawyer.
Oh.
It's my
It's
understanding.
part of town law?
It's my
That's
understanding.
all I need to know, if that's it.
All accounts are non-interest bearing now, anyway. The way it is. Show me one that does pay. I got some money. I'll put
This
it
might be a long one, but I'm wondering if you could outline 2 scenarios, like an extreme one, because as you said at the beginning, this is really designed to handle spikes in traffic when this was analyzed that we've really never conceived of before, whether it was a drilling operation, a wind farm, a spike on a, say, Mueller Road that we've never conceived of in terms of normal traffic on that. And then, for the questions asked before, could you outline a scenario where it's going to be close to the threshold that maybe some people may think be close to sort of normal business activity in the town, like a 4-lot subdivision? Because when you say regulated at 50 easels, that doesn't necessarily mean assessed damage, it just means monitored. So could you just sort of look at the sort of 10,000 easel scenario and the 55 easel scenario? What would happen? What's the sort of chain of events?
The chain of events, and I'm cycling through this here as we. The developer, regardless of size, once the town has said this developer is going to fill this out, right? And we're going to pick that guy, the 51 easel guy, and as you said, the 10,000 easel guy. They're going to give us the forms. They're going to give the town the forms. They're going to look at it. Okay, 51 easel guy is regulated, per se regulated. We need to do further digging on that particular road or roads that we're looking at. 51 easels is right at that threshold. How much damage is going to occur, and this is in an ideal theoretical situation. How much damage is going to occur with somebody that's has 51 easels versus 10,000 easels? This 51 easel person is likely to cause what we'd say is probably long-term damage, where you're shortening the life of something. You're not going to damage a road immediately so that it's going to collapse and you know, people are going to be looking for an alternate route. In that situation, we're going to monitor the road. We're going to do videography with some pretty detailed analysis going through it so that we know.
Who is?
Delta
So you're being paid to do it? Town's paying you?
Yes.
Okay.
No, the developer is responsible
Someone
for
has,
the
you're
cost.
making money.
Yes. And that, you bring up a good point there. Let's go back to that. So we've got video monitoring for the lower end of potential damage. We've got this 10,000 easel monster over here. Oh my God, these roads they're done. They're not designed for anything near that. These roads are gonna need to be repaired up front before anybody touches the road, because they're not gonna be passable. In either case, we, the engineer, are going to come up with a plan. We're going to, in a scoping report, we're gonna hand it to the town. And we're gonna say, here's what we think the appropriate approach is to address this particular situation. This guy, he's borderline, we're not sure. We can do some more expensive testing, but really, I mean, we think that just monitoring is the way to go here. Here's what this is gonna cost. Over here, on the other hand, we've got something significant, something bad is gonna happen. This road needs to be repaired ahead of time. And here's what the design costs, the engineering costs are going to be for both of them. We're gonna hand them to the town, and again, it's gonna go back to the town. What's your comfort level? Do you wanna do this? Do you not wanna do this? Do you want to, at that point, say, you know, this one, this big 10,000 easel person over here, we've gotta do that, and you move forward. You're gonna, at that point, have the opportunity to talk to the developer and say, here's what our engineer is saying, what do you think about this? Do you want to get into some sort of, you know, sit down, have a meeting with him, or are you just going to say, this is what we're doing moving forward? You have the ability within your law to negotiate or not negotiate. It's whatever you think is the appropriate thing to do. Same thing with this guy over here, your 51 easel guy. We're saying we should monitor this. We should do some videotaping or whatever the appropriate testing mechanism or inspection mechanism is. And that's not something that we necessarily have to do ourselves. That's something that you could have your program manager, and I'm not suggesting that this be done, this is another option. You could have your program manager going out there every other day just to see what's going on with the roads. And if it looks like something bad is starting to happen, then maybe you bring us in afterward to do some video monitoring. Or maybe you just want to cover it up front. Or maybe you say, you know what, we're just going to watch and see. We're close. The guy's right on the threshold. It's been a pretty dry season. The road's probably not going to have a lot of damage caused to it. We're just going to watch it that way.
So a small business person can get a letter any day saying you owe us $25,000 because we feel you've damaged our roads.
No.
Yes.
No, we can't.
Can I ask you a question on the extreme end? If you see there's gonna be a lot of traffic and it's gonna destroy your road, you're gonna get money from the developer to upgrade your road. What happens in the meantime? You're gonna stop a project so you can improve the road? It's not gonna happen.
It comes down to your call.
Okay.
Our recommendation is, in that case, you're going to have, and this is pretty standard for anything where you're going to have damage that's going to require reconstruction during their use of the road, where it's going to become a problem that you just can't get through it, or you're getting the calls that you don't want. If that road is going to be damaged to that level, we're going to recommend to you take care of it up front, so it's not a problem.
Right. Right. But it's still our call.
It's exactly.
Typically, a project on that magnitude would be months, if not, a year in permits, in seeker.
Correct, but how long does it take
special use
to
permits?
re-upgrade a road?
It's
It's just not gonna happen.
Well, a lot of it's going to depend on what type of road you're looking at.
Correct.
If you've got something that's got a few inches of base, with maybe a chip seal over it, how much damage is going to occur on that road versus something where you've got 12 inches of good base with a nice top on it. And that also is going to play into how much testing, how much evaluation do you want to do. If you know that your road, you've got, say, 3 inches of material on it or 4 inches of material, you know that you're going to have to do something with it. At that point, it wouldn't make sense to go out and do a bunch of corings, expensive corings, to find out that You already know what's out there. It's just, you're gonna have to do some improvements to it.
Thank you.
Hi. So I have 2 and maybe 3 questions, and the first one goes to, if let's say the threshold is this 50 ESL level, and a Delta engineer is called in, and you're doing some work, but it turns out that really it's at 49, and the town didn't need you at all, so who pays for that? Not the developer.
Let's back up a couple of slides.
There's a slide for this?
Kind of.
I mean, you know, they thought it was gonna be something
There
and
isn't
it's
one.
not. So
Delta,
no, I mean, I just
Delta
want-
doesn't become involved until the town contacts us. The
Right.
town fills out a form, the developer fills out a form, gives it to the town. The town says, hey, we're at 50.
Right,
They call Delta.
right.
Delta looks at it, we say, no, it's 49. End of discussion,
No,
nobody's billed for it.
Right, okay, I understand what you're saying, but let's say that's what happens in the beginning, and you say, no, it's 51, and then at the end of the project, it turns out really it was just 49. So who pays for it?
It won't change. That number is not going to change unless the
Okay.
developer gives you another haul route form that the number of trucks has changed.
Okay,
It's based on whatever the form is that the developer gives you to start is the number that you use going forward.
okay.
So the only time that would change is if he calls up and says, by the way, we've just doubled the numbers on this, we're sending in another form.
Okay, so then I have another question. Are there any roads that Delta as an engineering firm has recommended taking out of use because of the nature of the road, like because it's too steep or is too curvy, or no, nothing?
No, that's something that you can go back, your town can go back and forth with the developer if you choose. And what we've used as an example is, you've got a road that's in great shape. Probably not gonna have a lot of damage, and it's the best way to get from point A to point B, but on it happens to sit a school.
Mm-hmm.
Or it happens to be the cross-country team uses it from 3 to 5 o'clock every night to run it. You've got an opportunity to sit with your developer and say, let's work with this. We don't want to push you away. We want the development, but at the same time, we need to do something, to consider, the impacts and the safety of some kids that are running on the side of the road. So they've got an opportunity to maybe look at an alternate route or to work something out where they just don't use the road for that period of time.
So while you were doing town assessments, you didn't recommend to anywhere in the state, listen, this is not a good road for use for heavy traffic?
You want to evaluate
Okay.
actually have projects come.
Well, no, I thought they did assessments going
They
around.
did
to-
road
General,
No,
general
four
condition.
samples,
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
condition of the
Yeah,
road.
one of
But
the-
traffic, I'm sorry, but usage on the road is at the discretion of that would be a collaboration with the town,
With the
saying this
town.
is a safer route.
Right.
You would look at geometries, the turn, but
Yes.
you would say if that turn is too sharp or
Yes.
grade
Now,
is too steep,
Or
that
the
could
houses
be.
are too close to the road.
Right,
That's
or you may
a
have,
town thing.
you may have a section of a road where, okay, this is the route that they're gonna use. 3 miles into that road, there's a 90-degree bend, and, let's say it's a windmill farm, where you got some really long trailers.
Mm-hmm.
You've gotta cut, the trailer just simply is not gonna make it around that turn unless you do something to flatten out the inside of it. That's going to be a responsibility of the developer to make that improvement, to get that in.
Yeah, the word improvement is not a word that I would use when you're straightening out a country road, but be that as it may. My third question is there a reciprocal agreement between the towns to notify each other about road, any sort of development that's going on? Let's say a development's going on in town of Calhoun, and looks like it's on the Bethel side, does town
I
Callicoon?
believe the task force, if I could answer that, and
Yeah.
Ethan, correct me if you think I'm wrong, but I believe the task force is intending to do an intermunicipal agreement where that will happen.
Okay, that's
So
good.
if the development happens in our town, and we feel that Rockland could be impacted, or Delaware. or
If
Liberty,
everyone's
then
using the
that's
same
what-
agreement.
Everybody's aware my town adopted, I
Right.
sent a thing out to every town so they know.
The
where I
municipal
have
agreement
the
would be to
Right,
let
so
the
it-
other township know that you're going to have possibility of.
But if everyone, town's using different
Right,
rules.
but, Tom, but since we also border Fremont,
Every
would
town
we,
has different
would
zoning
we,
also.
would we say, hey, Fremont, we've got this project going on, just as a courtesy? I mean,
I would guess, yes.
okay.
Well, they should, because the next time maybe the other way around.
Yeah, well,
So, I mean, they have to
exactly.
reciprocate or else.
I think it would be a good thing
Ethan,
to
did I
put
get
into
that right or
practice.
wrong?
Yeah, certainly, there's a lot of discussion there, but the fact that you've got several different towns, I don't know if all of the Sullivan County group is here tonight, but it's obvious that it's occurring right now. I mean, maybe not on a written piece of paper, but there's definitely a lot of communication going on between towns.
Yeah, but it should be on a, what I'm saying is there should be a mechanism that triggers, the communication. I know it's
I
not a
won't
question
dispute that,
for
but
you.
that's
That's
up to
been
the towns to
discussed
work
in
out.
many meetings.
Okay, well, I'm happy to those meetings, so that's why I'm asking.
Yes, sir.
Back to the whole route designation or selection. As I understand it, it's the town highway superintendent has the responsibility for reviewing that and approving that, right? And you were talking
Not
about.
necessarily so. It's whoever the town makes responsible.
Designates.
Whoever the town,
Could that be?
might make it you. No, I'm serious. In our case, we're our code enforcement
You
officer.
may have to hire somebody.
Yeah,
to
but it's
do
not,
it.
you can't say that it's always gonna be the highway
There's an
superintendent.
associated question with that, but does the town have the absolute right to determine or approve the haul route? So if in the town's discretion, there should be no way that the traffic should be on that particular street where the school is or something like that? Or can a developer challenge that in court or in any other way?
It's more of a legal question than an engineering question, but if you're going to restrict anyone from a road, you can't do it by particular entity. You could do it with a weight posting, something like that, but you can't say, you yes, you no. That won't, as I understand it, and please, that's a question for a lawyer.
So then the town really has no say in, whether a developer, so a developer can use any of the roads that they feel like.
No.
Is that
Well,
what you're saying?
within the guidelines of you as the developer, I'm going to go along this road here. I, as the town, say, okay, you're going to go along this road here, but here's the issues that you need to fix because you're going to go along there that otherwise wouldn't exist. If you're willing to do that, then we're going to work something out. If you're not, they can't use it until you give them.
Yeah, the town is still gonna sign off on this. If
Well-
the town's not happy, you say, sorry, you don't get the.
Steve, there were examples of that in the workshop.
Okay, well,
They used, a school was one example,
Yeah.
and a bridge was another.
Yeah, you got-
And they said you can't use that road because of the bridge limit.
Absolutely.
And another one, they said you can't use it because it's a safety issue at the school. I mean,
Right.
we went over those things in
So-
some of our
But
workshops.
my question is that an absolute right? The town can say to a developer, you cannot use that road, or can a developer challenge that?
I think
That might be a legal
Anything can be
I think
challenged.
legally, anything can be
Well,
challenged.
anything can be challenged,
Like, it can be sued for anything, but I'm saying,
Article 78 on
yeah, on anything. But if there's a good reason for us to say that,
Right.
I think it'll hold up.
The town at that point, the town is saying you can't use that road, and here are the reasons why. It can't just be, I just don't want you to use it.
Yeah, of course not.
If,
but
if,
it's gotta be reasonable.
And there's a viable alternative.
right.
Are we gonna get into some of the cost things too? Is there gonna be a second question and answer session, a break, and then a?
I think we're beyond the break, so it's just.
We're heading for breakfast pretty soon.
It seems to me that the law, as I read it, you know, creates a host of new responsibilities, like for the town board, as far as auditing, reviewing, the town supervisor, the town highway superintendent becomes a cop. He has to monitor this now, or
The
that's.
option is to not do anything at all, sir, I guess, and then take our chances with what may happen.
Right,
That's-
and
that's
then
an
all the
option.
taxpayers gotta pay a lot of
So-
money. We're elected officials, we're willing to take it on. I mean, that's part of your job. We're willing to protect our roads so that
Right,
taxpayers aren't gonna be
but all of
hit with
these
an
new
unfortunate thing of redoing
responsibilities
roads.
take time and
Well,
are gonna
absolutely.
cost the
Absolutely.
town money.
Absolutely.
So how is the town gonna recoup the upfront costs?
We're all salaried. We're all salaried.
Ad valorem.
Repairing roads. It's a salaried job.
Ad
It's a
valorem
salaried job.
taxes.
Steve, I've been highway superintendent 12 years, and I don't know all the answers to that yet. So it's a learning process till the day you die, and you're gonna learn a lot
Well,
of
let's
things.
just look at it this way.
We
Last
also-
4 years of my town, I haven't seen one project
No.
that's gonna trip this, okay? So it's not something that's happening every month, twice a month. It's gonna
But
be
we haven't
very
either.
limited,
You never know.
okay? Can't tell you, but if one town has one in the next 2 years, there'll be something. okay?
I've been on town board for 20 years. We haven't had anything come through town of Rockland might trigger this.
The only thing close
I
I
will
had
say
was
this.
Blaine Pipeline when it came through town, that's it.
I will say this, in the springtime, the town trucks do more damage to a road than any other vehicle around. That's the God's honest truth, because the single axles, they weigh so much, the roads are soft, and we go back and forth, and we destroy them. We got wheel tracks.
Can you
Wheel
bring
tracks
that?
is deep.
I'm sorry, people come with a worksheet that's so important, just for a second.
Give before.
Tom, and Dave and Greg, I mean, I think we're all here to really learn about the law, so let's walk through a construction project based on the worksheet and see where we fall on a single house, 2 houses, 3 houses, and see where the harm comes.
Are you okay with this? Are you okay with this?
With what?
Proceeding? Just
Why
look
don't
at.
you let them go through it?
I'm not sure what the question is.
Yeah, can you bring up the
Wants to build
worksheet?
4 houses on the same road in,
Let's just talk about how
in a
many,
year's time.
how many houses, how many concrete trucks, how many box trucks, how many roofing trucks, how many spray foam insulation trucks, how many triaxles, single axles, and what a single house really means, and see how that stacks up here. So, number 6 is the most common one, which are box trucks, double axle, cement trucks. I guess we have double axles, and sheetrock trucks, boom trucks, which aren't on there, which are the biggest thing a construction company would see. So I was figuring out, Dave, I think every code enforcement officer in here has worked with us, so they know we know what we're doing. But this is what I figure out. And I added up, one house is going to take at least 70 trips of number 6. And it's amazing it takes that many trucks, but it does. And this is how it plays out. Say you got to get your excavation machine there. That's a trip. Probably have to go twice. You have 5 concrete trucks coming between
All
the
right, wait,
foundation
wait,
and the slab.
we need to stop this right now, okay? This can't continue, because every contractor has a different method of approaching a project. I can bring in, I wanna bring in 100 yards of fill. What's your average dump truck? I don't know,
Triaxle.
I don't know what the number,
It's another
what's an average, what's a town truck haul in terms of material? 6 yards, 8 yards? Okay?
Can I not do this?
It's a
Are you
slow,
not going to let me do this?
it's an analysis based on,
No, I think everyone agrees it takes 4 concrete trucks to build a house.
we're defining, we're using,
119 trucks. It takes 70 trucks to build a house. So Dave, you were saying 5 houses wouldn't matter. 2 houses wouldn't matter. 10. It does. 119 trucks. 2 houses, you are past that limit.
it's also an improvement to a parcel, so we're not going to start.
Well, Dave, why don't you think it impacts 2 houses?
Wouldn't you be segmented into one house and then another house and then another house and then another house?
Well, they're saying project, so subdivision. They're asking you to define a subdivision. It's 3 houses. They want you to know all 70 routes where those trucks are coming from. Can you imagine? I have no idea where my suppliers come from. What if I change at the last minute and use
town roads, not county or state roads.
So you have to know where the town roads are. You have to know where your house
You
is.
should, we know where they are, and you know where they
Will
are.
they be coming off the exit?
Who's kidding who?
Off which exit? Will they be coming from Pennsylvania, Liberty? Will they be coming from, maybe they
Well, when
open,
they
maybe
go over a
CES is
town
gonna.
road, that's what we're
Only
concerned
town
about.
road.
We within this
Exactly.
program, just to clarify the point, we cannot define how a contractor does anything. We can't say that it's going to take this many trucks, or it's going to be, you know,
You don't know how many trucks it takes to build a house. I can tell you.
okay, and I can find 5 contractors to give me 5 different numbers of how many it's gonna take to build that.
But it's not 10. It's not 10 trucks.
To build that.
It's
to
not
build-
50 trucks.
Okay, at the end of the day, at the end of the
Well,
day.
yes, they do.
No, they don't.
Well, I'm only talking about the vehicles that
Well,
get
what I'm-
counted.
what I'm-
Pickups don't get counted. Count those out. Vans don't get counted. Count those out. But do count the boom truck. Do count the insulation truck. Do count the window truck. Do count the excavation truck. Do count the topsoil truck. Do count.
Bottom line, how much does the window truck weigh?
That's right, that's a
Well,
five
it-
category.
it's
not a
right
six
here,
category.
number 6.
Not necessarily, it could be 5.
But it could be 6.
It could be 3.
You know what really depends on? It really depends on, you're here to throw rocks at the program. They're trying, and you are. I mean, be honest. You're trying to throw rocks
Hey,
at
Ed,
it. These
don't tell
guys,
me why
these
I'm
guys
here.
are trying
I'm
to
here to show
explain
you
how
that
it works.
119 trucks is not a lot. That's what I'm trying to show Tom and Gary and Dave, that 119 trucks is not a lot of trucks. That's all I'm here to say.
Okay.
So then maybe 50 is not the number. And we have that as a town. we
I
have
would
the
like to say,
opportunity to
as a
change that.
taxpayer, if there's something going on that's damaging the roads, then I think it needs to be looked at.
Well, depends on which seat you're sitting in.
But that's what this is a method. It's all it is a method to assess the damage and and have the responsible parties pay for it.
It's to protect the town.
And everyone has been saying that this won't affect the small fry. My concern from the very beginning is it will. And the law, the effort, the amazing effort of 3 years of putting together this document, I was always impressed with. When I saw the condensed 12-page version, I wasn't impressed with it because it cast a very wide net to prevent gas drilling. We don't have developers. We don't have Walmart. This is about gas drilling. We know that's illegal to say gas drilling in this document. So the net was cast as wide as possible. And it's catching 119 trucks is no more than 2 houses. Dave Keebler has told me, Chuck, whatever you've done in the past, this wouldn't have been impacted. You're wrong. You're just wrong. And I don't think you realize how many trucks it takes to come to a job site. But if you sit at the end of my
I've
drive...
got houses, and I know how many. I've never, in my wildest dreams, used that many trucks that would fall into that category.
Well, then we'll look at it tomorrow when you're in Highland. I'll show you how many trucks you
I'd be
use.
glad to do that.
Yeah, me too.
Time frame is what has to come into. So
No, I don't think it does. It's project.
Towns in the back row. At the end of the day, we're giving you guidelines, okay? If within your municipality you feel the guidelines need to be adjusted, you have every right to do that. At the end of the day, we're going to give you a recommendation if something is regulated on what we feel the appropriate approach to remedy that particular problem is. Do you have to agree with it? No, certainly, you can go to some alternative.
Can I just say something about this, the gentleman over here that's so concerned about his construction activity? Section 11 says the town board may by resolution accept an applicant from the requirements of this local law, provided that the town board makes a finding that the town highways to be used by the applicant will be adequately protected and any damage to town highways will be adequately repaired by virtue of the requirements, blah, blah, blah. So the town board has the power to accept any applicant. You know, it's as simple as that.
No, it's not. Going before a town board and pleading your case when you're trying to build 2 houses is not as simple as that.
Okay. Anyhow, there is some mechanism.
Nothing is simple. The supervisor from Bethel said it best. Nothing's as simple as a piece of paper. As soon as you get caught up in an administrative, circus, you're in it. You get bounced from highway department to code enforcement officer to town board to planning board, and all of a sudden you're trying to do some little business, and you're not getting out of this administrative, bureaucratic town thing when all you're trying to do is build a little house. Now, if you're talking about 20 houses, I'm with you. But this thing captures people much smaller than 20 homes.
It's gonna come back to the comfort level of the towns. And we hate to keep beating on that.
It's certainly not the
It comes back to
intent. It's certainly not
what
the
each
intent.
town individually is comfortable with. It can be huge, it could be the extreme that we talked about, one of our clients. Everybody that walks through the door, here's your form. Come talk to us after you filled your form out. Is that overkill?
Yes.
Certainly.
But
In our opinion.
We were all supposed to pass the same law. The idea was not for everyone to pass a different law.
trying to.
But it's not happening.
Well, there's only 2 towns that passed it. that I know of.
That's right. And everyone else wants to tinker with it.
Yes, and we have that right. And we have that right. You don't have that right to take that away from us. We have that right to tinker it how we want to tinker it. Don't look at me like that.
I
We all
just
take
said
our own
it. The
zoning
idea
laws.
was everybody
We take
passes
our own
the same.
laws.
And they vote.
That was the whole idea of it. Everybody passes the same law. Because then people can understand what they're getting into.
Does everybody have the same zoning law in this town? Thank you very much. Absolutely
The town
not.
of Highland doesn't care what I do.
Well, that's town of Highland.
So, no, this program is not extend beyond the boundaries of New York State. No, actually, I live in Pennsylvania, and I'm a politician in Pennsylvania. And our laws are set up that this type of approach is very difficult to address.
We'll officially call a meeting over. How about that? No, not this kind of meeting.